Welcome to The Lens, Louisville's Ebony News source. I'm your host, Crystal Goodner. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune into this broadcast. And let me tell you, this show is chock full of information that you do not want to miss. First, we're going to talk about nonprofits. Some wonderful nonprofits are going on here in our city, and we're going to take a closer look. This is going to be a special 4-part series. And also, we're going to give you a history lesson about the phenomenal parish name. Intriguing interview with the gentleman that was actually the colleague of Charles Parrish Jr. All that and more on this edition of The Lens.
When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Pressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Way down in Egypt's land. Way down. Go down. Way down in Egypt's land. Hello, Pharaoh, to let my people go.
Simmons College, in collaboration with the Angela Project, presents 40 Days of Prayer for the Liberation of American Descendants of Slavery. Biblically, the number 40 represents a period of testing, trial, or probation. So we are inviting you to join us in 40 Days of Prayer as we observe this 400th anniversary of enslavement in America.
Beginning July the 12th and concluding August the 20th, Christians and justice-loving people from around the world will pause to commemorate 400 years of slavery, so we might reflect on where we have been and project a new course for race relations in America.
For each of the 40 days, there will be facts surrounding slavery and black oppression in America, and we are the voice of one, prayer declarations. Also, read the actual stories of enslaved people escaping captivity through the Underground Railroad.
We who are the American descendants of slaves realize that we did not come to this country seeking a better life. We were brought against our will to help others have a better life. It's called slavery. The first woman was a woman named Angela, and that began the sad tradition of enslavement in this country. We will pause to remember their pain and project a new future.
On August 20th, at the culmination of the 40 Days of Prayer, the ceremony book will be used in services held across this nation in commemoration of this 400th year of slavery in America. So let's go global with this initiative and show the world the power of prayer. 40 days, 400 years.
Welcome to The Lens. My name is Randy Whetstone Jr., and today we start a new 4-part series highlighting the tremendous work that nonprofit organizations have made in the city of Louisville. So let's get started and take a look at part 1 of Hidden Heroes.
Access. One thing our kids like is access to certain spaces and opportunities. And here at S1E4, that's something I take great pride in and put my kids in positions and spaces that they're very uncomfortable in. And I teach my kids that growth happens uncomfortably. And the more uncomfortable you are, the more likely you are to be successful. Years when I was a male, I didn't know I was a minority. That was something that I never really bought into. Right? So it's our job to tell our kids, you come from kings and queens, you have purpose, you have passion, you have a gift, and you're here for a reason. And it's up to you and us to make sure that you know what that reason is and how to make sure that reason gives way to what's going on in the world. But if you keep buying into that narrative, it'll take you in and you become part of somebody else's story instead of writing your own. The media has presented a certain narrative that our kids have bought into, that they're not capable. The confidence has been destroyed. The accountability has been removed. They've gave a lot of our kids excuses, diagnosis, and put them in certain classrooms that don't allow them to be successful. We know we're losing kids every day, and we're very aware of that. And I'm not going to be here and act like that I've lost kids throughout the way, and understand that that's part of it. But if I can save 99, and I teach my kids, the narrative is wrote in pencil, so you can change it whenever you're ready. So we're rewriting that narrative. As a tutoring program that started with 4 kids. Within 3 weeks, I had 47 kids. And I knew that the need was great, so I went and hired some staff from University of Louisville and Bellarmine. At the end of the conclusion of my first year of tutoring, a parent came to me and said, so what's next? What's the plan? So I said, let's start a summer program. So I reached out to St. Stephen's. Langston Gaither gave me an opportunity to do some different. That first year, we had 64 kids. And the next year, he allowed me to come back as my own S1E4 organization, 501c3. S1E4 is an out-of-school academic enrichment program that focuses on social and emotional growth with an academic focus. Also by helping perpetuate the cycle of success by reiterating commonly missed concepts and principles that JCPS has already created. So we're not recreating the wheel, we're just making sure that it's getting done the right way with the right people. I got a 98% retention rate, which means I don't lose kids. I meet them where they are. So tutoring is not only you come to me, I come to you. So we have a 3-phase. We meet with the parent. I have a parent committee of 54 parents. We meet with the student, we meet with the counselor or the teacher. So my program goes into the schools and sees what kids are doing in classes. I apply a whole nother level of accountability to my kids, right? And visiting them in school is a game changer, because now the schools know this child has a support system. And when the school knows that this kid has a foundation, they treat them a little different. Because they understand most kids don't have no foundation. Nobody really cares. They don't know things are going bad until report cards come out. But when they have somebody who's constantly holding the teachers accountable too, you get a different response. I'm going to put my kids in a position to be successful. I'm gonna start a perpetuating cycle that allows my kids to have no excuses, but a lot of expectations. Applying expectation with structure and faith. And know that Sowing Seeds of Faith is here to stay. We're going to make sure our city knows that we're here to make impact.
Hey, stick and stay, don't go away. The VIP report with Miss Shirlene Shanklin when we come back, right here on The Lens.
I could take the spiritual liberty and step into the imagination of a slave anticipating freedom. I could not wait until I got my hands on the book.
Realizing that being black, he was always in the rear, in behind.
They treasured getting an education, even if they only had the Bible.
Just the whole notion of how do we start anew? And they realized there were things that they had not been exposed to.
The church was so instrumental in helping these freed slaves realize the absolute critical need for education.
It was their means of elevation to help get them from where they were to where they wanted to be.
If I were to go back down the roads of history and I would think about what we had to go through, some of the barriers, I would think of Plessy versus Ferguson, who created the separate but equal doctrine.
That was the wording, but the practicality of separate but equal did not take place. We got second-handed school books, we got second-handed musical instruments.
Sometimes the desks had derogatory terms about black people engraved in them.
If they caught you reading one of the books that dealt with economics, they'd ask you where you got the book from. I ain't talking about what I heard, I'm talking about what I had to live with.
It gave them a sense of determination that regardless of what they were told or made to feel about themselves, they were just that more determined.
We had educators that no matter what the resources were or were not, we got a quality education.
Simmons College comes from that tradition that, you know, a learned people cannot be deceived.
So the barriers wasn't so much a barrier as it was an incentive.
To break those barriers and to become the leaders of our nation and leaders in their community, the need for a historically black college is so critical.
I am so happy that this college is located in the black community. It really ends up being a beacon of hope.
Around the country where HBCUs exist, they become the mecca for employment opportunities, for economic development.
And I can see how Simmons plays such a critical role in exposing to people to so many things that you just obviously think they've been exposed to. They have not.
But see, here's the deal. Education is the new currency. you know, in the world, not just in the United States or Louisville.
Students who come to a black institution leave with a better sense of self-expression because they are learning more about who they are.
They say, wow, this is a great repository of me.
Simmons is not just a school.
And wherever education has been in the hearts and in the lives of blacks, the royalty and the kingship of who we really are comes forth in leadership, in stamina, in growth, determination, influence, and it uplifts the black community. So education in our history was king, and education is king.
I'm Charlene Shanklin with this week's The VIP Report. On Tuesday, October the 2nd, it's Lizzo. She'll be in concert at the Louisville Palace. The show begins at 8 p.m. The Lincoln Foundation presents the Lionel Hampton Tribute on Friday, August the 23rd at 7 p.m. at Kentucky Country Day. Go to lincolnfdn.org for additional information. Buddy Guy will be at Iroquois Amphitheater on Saturday, August the 24th. It's the Lipsticks War Poetry Slam on Saturday, August the 31st at 7 p.m. at the Kentucky Center in Whitney Hall. Admission is free to the public. And Mary J. Blige adds Nas to her tour. Now, the closest city in our area will be Indianapolis, Indiana. They are scheduled for Thursday, September the 12th at Bankers Life Fieldhouse. Grammy Award hip-hop artist Chance the Rapper announces his Bad Day Tour with Louisville on the schedule. Save the date of Friday, October the 18th at the KFC Yum Center. Tickets start at $59.50. Now, if you have a story idea, send it to me at the VIP Report. I'm Charlene Shanklin, and that's a look into this week's events.
At Simmons College and also in this city, names like William J. Simmons and Elijah Mars and B.J. Miller and C.H. Parrish are like royalty. What would it be like to be able to have a conversation with these giants? Well, I had a wonderful opportunity to sit down with a former colleague of Charles H. Parrish Jr. He tells us a little bit about this phenomenal man's legacy and how he truly helped change a city.
The history of Simmons College is long and rich, with many of its predecessors playing an intricate part in the school's success. To date, Simmons has had 13 presidents, but it was Presidents 2 and 3, William J. Simmons and Charles Parrish Sr., that truly helped to shape this institution's foundation. The son of Simmons' third president, Charles Parrish Jr., would go on to follow in his father's footsteps as a trailblazer and add many firsts to his legacy. Earlier this summer, the Lens had a chance to sit down with Dr. John Rieger, a professor of sociology at the University of Louisville, who was also a colleague of one of Simmons College's sons, Charles Parrish Jr.
Once I found out about him, I wanted to meet him. He was the only black faculty member in our department at that time, and we struck up an acquaintance pretty quickly after I got here, and that continued for probably the next 8 or more years while he was still active on campus.
The year was 1951. Dr. John Rieger was a young professor of sociology then when he crossed paths with Charles Parrish Jr. Rieger says during their talks, Parrish shared with him his family's history and spoke fondly about a place called Simmons University.
Charles Parrish Jr. was born in 1899 and in Louisville, and he graduated from Central High School in 1916, which means he was an accelerated student. And from there, he went on to Howard University and finished a bachelor's degree in mathematics, and in 1920 graduated from there, and then very shortly went off to Columbia University in New York City and finished a master's degree in sociology. And what's distinctive about that, of course, is that his father, in the meantime, took over Simmons College and became the president here. It was, I think, it must have been a pretty exciting time for CH to have this happen. And when he came back in 1921, he taught math here for 10 years.
Rieger says Parrish also coached football at the school. The University of Louisville at that time was still segregated, and buckling under the pressure to integrate the school, they opened a subsidiary of U of L named Louisville Municipal College.
Simmons University, as it was then known, went into near financial bankruptcy because of the Depression, and they even gave up this campus.
That was until 1951, 4 years before the civil rights movement exploded on the scene in America. 3 years before the historic Brown versus Board of Education case. A ruling was handed down stemming from a lawsuit filed by the NAACP, requiring the University of Louisville to integrate its school.
What happened was that the university took all the black students from over here, but they didn't take any of the faculty. A pattern of behavior that is familiar. I mean, that same thing happened in the desegregation of the schools in this county in 1975, if you recall. And an out-of-court deal was reached, as it was explained to me by C.H. Parrish. An out-of-court deal was arranged between the University of Louisville and the remaining black faculty that hadn't wandered off and taken jobs elsewhere. I think there were 5 of them left, to take one member of that faculty, and the school left it up to the remaining black faculty to figure out how to make that choice. And this was one of the things that seemed to surprise a lot of people when I told this story. C.H. explained to me that they agreed to choose by lot to see which one would come over to the university. And they got together in this building, apparently, and they drew straws, and Charles Parrish Jr. got the short straw. So it was merely by chance that he became the first black faculty member in any white institution in the South.
Parrish would travel to D.C. to earn a bachelor's degree from Howard University, New York to get a master's from Columbia University, which at the time was one of the best sociology schools in the world, and then attended the University of Chicago to acquire his PhD.
In the first couple of decades of the 20th century, the belief among the small black aristocracy that did exist was that white people would accept them if they just got their bona fides in shape, if they went out and got advanced degrees and showed that they had the credentials that they could gain entrance to appropriate jobs and status in this predominantly white society. And so a number of them went out and did that, including Parrish, you know, and they arrive at the end of their training and discover there were no opportunities for them.
Rieger says that Parrish told him of a story about a parent saying that their child would not be taught by a black man. But he persisted, because like his father, he knew he had a path to blaze.
I think he was used to being the first. I mean, every black person of achievement in those days seemed to be the first, you know, to break the racial barriers wherever they found themselves. And Parrish was of strong enough backbone to withstand it. I don't think that guy ever lost his cool.
Parrish would go on to become the chair of the sociology department at the University of Louisville. In 1959, he would hold that position until 1964 and retired just 5 years later. What a man of mark. In 1977, the University of Louisville dedicated Parrish Court in his honor. And that, my friends, is what Simmons history is made of. We honor you, Charles H. Parrish Jr., and your work will forever live on.
Hello, this is Kevin Cosby, president of Simmons College of Kentucky. Perhaps you remember the Broadway musical that came out in 1957 called West Side Story. It was a story about two rival gangs, the Puerto Ricans and the Polish gangs, and two people from these two rival gangs who fell in love with each other. Their dilemma was that the male was not welcomed in the Puerto Rican community and the female was not welcomed in the Polish community. And so they sung a song which was the most moving part of the musical. There's a place for us. Somewhere there's a place for us. And everyone is looking for a place where they can be accepted, affirmed, and celebrated. And that's why Black space is so important. So often when we think of integration, we think of the disintegration of Black space, and there's no need for Black space. But just like there's a need for Asian space and Korean space and Chinese space and Anglo space, there is a need for Black space. And you don't have Black space because of segregation. The purpose of Black space is celebration, where Black people can come and be affirmed, where Black people don't have to worry about, am I using colloquialisms and expressions that perhaps may be stigmatized in perhaps majority white space? And believe it or not, there are many Black kids who have that type of anxiety, wondering, well, because I'm not necessarily fitting into the culture of the dominant community, that perhaps I'm being perceived as less than. When Black kids come into Black space, they don't have to worry about any anxiety. They can truly be themselves, and they can sing the old song of Sly and the Family Stone, thank you for letting me be myself again. So here's a shout out to Black space. And not only is it good space for Black people, but guess what? Those of you who are of another ethnic group who've never been in Black space, don't believe the stereotypes. Come on down. Check out what Simmons College is doing. Come in Black space. I think you'll love it. And now you're in focus about Black space on The Lens.
Everything that you think you know is a lie, and it was intentional.
Join us next week as we go in depth into the ADOS movement.
Without government opening those opportunities up, those opportunities get hoarded and disseminated based on color.
We have a special recap on the 3-year movement known as the Angela Project, which has positioned itself into the 2020 presidential race.
That the church must speak prophetically to those who are in power.
A local HBCU and a group of multi-ethnic pastors and leaders that brought about the conception and facilitated the initiation of the project.
And not just do token kind of pulpit exchange things, but move on to these kind of policy changes and make real repentance and restitution and reparation for the things that have happened in the past.
And the special partnership between 3 national conventions, 2 prominent speakers, and the sacrifice of 1 local pastor to bring it all together.
It was phenomenal.
Miraculous. Excellent. And extraordinary.
But what was so refreshing was just the honesty.
Next week on The Lens.